What's up? It's Friday. This is Foxborough Rush. I'm Annabelle Hasselbeck, joined by Khalin Kapoor. Khalin, first show that we get to do together. How are you doing today?
AB, I'm doing great. It's great to be working with you. I'm a big fan of yours, and it's great to be back. And we got some big news to talk about here today.
Let's go. I'm excited to do the show with you. And you're right, big news today. So let's get right to it. But first, let's welcome on special guest from 98.5, the Sports Hub Patriots reporter and host of Sunday Kickoff, Alex Barth. Thanks for joining us. Alex, we'll get right to it, but some surprising news out of Foxborough. Just a few minutes ago, Adam Schefter just reported that the Patriots have released veteran safety Jabrill Peppers. What are your thoughts on this move?
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm pretty surprised. Peppers has been a good player for them as long as he's been here. At times where they've struggled, I also think he has the mental makeup that they're looking for in Foxborough. Under Mike Vrabel, we saw him viewed as a leader in some of the Forge and Foxborough stuff, and at other times this summer he was a captain for their in-stadium scrimmage. Stylistically, I don't. There's some questions about his fit. I thought he fit enough with his talent that he would make sense. There still is a need for a box safety. Now they were crowded in that room between Craig Woodson, who they were going to keep as a high draft pick, 4th round pick, Kyle Duggar, and then Peppers. So we heard they maybe wanted to move Duggar. And I don't know if this is, not being able to trade Duggar. All right, we have too many box safeties. I don't know why you then wouldn't release Duggar instead of Peppers if you think Peppers is the better player. But maybe it shouldn't be as much of a surprise. It's hitting me and some other people. He did play into that final preseason game against the Giants, play a few drives into that. But this is, again, a guy that's been good for them at a position where they're thin. And so it comes as a surprise because Kyle Duggar has taken a step back. Jalen Hawkins was okay last year, but he's probably more of a rotational player. And then Craig Woodson's a rookie. He's an unknown. I think he had a relatively good spring and summer, but he's not a sure thing. You don't know what he's going to give you once these games become real. So they suddenly go from safety being what was on paper, I thought, one of their better positions to now there's some real question marks there.
And Alex, interestingly, the timing of this move, it feels kind of like an 11th hour move to me. We're less than a week until the start of the NFL season. The Patriots start in just over a week. What does the timing speak to you about this move for Jabrill Peppers? It seems like kind of waiting down the line to the end of the wire to make this deal.
Yeah, I'd go beyond that. 12th, 13th hour with this? I mean, the Friday of roster cut week. If it comes on Tuesday, even maybe on Wednesday, we saw this with Kendrick Bourne. They kept him initially as they were trying to get a trade done and then ultimately released him. Maybe there was still something they were working on that we don't know about, but it's a pretty quick move, again, for a guy that didn't seem to be on the bubble to begin with. So to make this cut at the last minute makes you wonder if, there's an injury or something there that maybe we don't know about. And that's just me guessing because I'm trying to figure out why this would happen and why now. The timing does certainly lend to why it's such a surprise.
Yeah, it is a surprise timing-wise, and just there has to be more to the story, right, just for where this has come. But Mike Reese recently reported that the Patriots could be set to start Hawkins and the rookie Craig Woodson out of Cal. What are your thoughts on if the Patriots will be starting these two players?
So, again, with Woodson, and I wasn't as high on that draft pick as I was some of their others, but credit where credit's due. He had a great spring, and then I thought he had a solid performance this summer. So you've seen some things to like. Very instinctive player, has an ability to get around the football, plays a little different stylistically, but there's some individual traits that actually remind me of Kyle Duggar when he was a younger player. But we got to see how that translates against NFL starting competition. Then Jalen Hawkins, again, I think is a good depth player, a good rotational player. If he's playing 80, 85, 90% of the time, he's going to get tested. That's going to be a spot where people look to pick on him. So it will be interesting to see kind of how he rises to that occasion. This is a bigger role than I think a lot of people saw him playing. So it's unknown. Like, I think Hawkins was okay last year, but it was in a completely different role than what he's probably going to play now without Jabrill Peppers. So you kind of throw that out and, okay, this is a new test for him. We'll see. This is going to be a major question now for them going into the season. This defense looks like it should be a real positive for them. I know you said we're going to get to Christian Gonzalez in a little bit. It's assuming he's healthy, of course, but him, Carlton Davis, they've upgraded the pass rush. Milton Williams, Caleb Chason has looked very good this summer, has arguably been their best player. They're going to get Christian Barmore back after he missed last year with the medical issue. So there's a lot to like about the defense. But part of the overall, what I liked about the group is it was a more veteran group, whereas the offense is a lot of rookies, second-year players. Well, now it's not. It doesn't change the whole defense, but I think this puts a real question mark on the safety position for them.
And chief among these reverberations, Alex, we've been talking about him as Kyle Duggar. Do you view this as a good move for him going forward in this season? And what is the true impact on him after Jabrill Peppers got released?
I mean, it's an interesting question. It helped. There's going to be more of a role for him now because him and Duggar are similar players, and him and Peppers are similar players, and Peppers was a spot of him ahead of him on the depth chart. I still think he's probably a rotational player because clearly they felt how they felt about Kyle Duggar with all these reports that he could be traded. They were looking to trade him. The speculation that he could be released, just the way he was being used, playing late into those preseason games. I don't think this changes the way they feel about Kyle Duggar. So to me, he's still probably in a rotational, if not a reserve role. It's one less guy in front of him. Maybe that's the reason for the cut. They just felt like the two were redundant. And for whatever reason, maybe financially it was easier for them to move on from Peppers than it was for Duggar. I think Peppers still clearly looked like the better player. So more of a path to him for playing this year. I still think this is probably his last year here. It's much easier to get out of his contract after this season. And it doesn't change the fact that he's not as much of a scheme fit. But it's definitely a quicker path to playing for Kyle Duggar.
Yeah, well, Vrabel said that there would be more moves, and this is certainly one of them. Now with Peppers' release, all 6 of the Patriots' former captains last season are no longer with the team. But let's move on to some other huge news that broke last night. The Cowboys trading away Micah Parsons to the Packers in exchange for 2 first-round picks and a nose tackle. Patriots fans probably wondering why they were not in on this deal. Alex, how can you explain this?
I just think they were probably too far. They're too far away. The Packers were a Micah Parsons away from being a Super Bowl contender. And so you can kind of borrow from the future to improve the team now. When you look at the Patriots and the significant needs they still have, they're going to need a wide receiver at some point. They're going to need a starting right tackle. That's not an easy player to find. They really might need a starting safety after this if it doesn't work out with Hawkins and or Woodson. And that's kind of turning into a premium position. They will need a pass rusher. Now, Parsons would have answered that. Plus, they're going to have to probably give up. You look at the comparison for giving up Kenny Clark. That'd be a guy like Christian Barmore. And then you might have to give up more just because of his medical history, and the Cowboys might want some insurance. So they don't have the roster to support it. Micah Parsons wasn't elevating the Cowboys to postseason success, as good as he is. And he's maybe the best non-quarterback in the league. But he wasn't elevating the Cowboys to postseason success, and that's with the Cowboys having the better roster. So I think for the Patriots to give up what would have been 3-4 premium assets for one player, they need 3 to 4 premium players at least to get this roster in a contending position still. So I just think they were I think they were too far away to make this move.
And Alex, this felt like an earth-shattering move in larger NFL circles. I got to pose a question to you because it feels obvious to me who won. But if you're Jerry Jones, do you make this deal? Like, after all of the speculation, the Micah Parsons tweet, everything that happened, and Jerry Jones saying Micah Parsons is going to be a Dallas Cowboy, after all of that, do you still sit down and make this deal at Green Bay?
I think this is a pretty daring decision from Jerry Jones, I guess would be the political way to put it. And the fact that he admits last night that the door was still open for them to bring Parsons back, and he goes and says, well, these picks could be Pro Bowl players. Yeah, they could be Micah Parsons, who you already have. You just have to pay. You have the money to pay.
Yeah,
it's really hard to It's really hard to justify this to me for the Dallas Cowboys, considering clearly Parsons, the door had been left open. It's one thing if he says, nope, trade me, I'm not going to report, right? Then you have to trade him. It's still on the Cowboys and on Jerry Jones for letting it get to that point. It should have never gotten to that point to begin with. But the fact that the door was still open and they still end up deciding him in taking 2 picks and a defensive tackle over bringing back arguably the best pass rusher in the NFL is a surprising choice, and I don't see how that makes the Dallas Cowboys a better football team.
Alex, I'm sure there were a lot of moments throughout that process with Micah Parsons and the Cowboys that created some timestamps of tension, but you got to imagine that the preseason showing of him on the stretcher and kind of laying down had something to do with it. Was there a pinpoint moment that you think really was a deciding factor in this trade?
Yeah, I go back. There were 2. So, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head here, Jerry Jones had made some comments, sort of, not really, but they could be interpreted as calling Micah Parsons soft and saying, yeah, we pay him for 17 games. We may not get him for 17 games. And then Parsons releases that statement asking for a trade, and there was some not so direct but can be interpreted as comments about Jerry Jones in there. And I just think once you start talking about the owner, it's hard to come back. And Jerry, I don't think Micah Parsons was wrong in doing so because of Jerry Jones' comments. So I think it was just a bad situation from there. But again, according to Jerry Jones, and it sounds like Micah Parsons too, based on reports, the door was still open as recently as yesterday before the trade was done. So maybe it could have been salvaged despite all of that. I don't know that there ever was a point that it was completely off the table until the deal was done, which makes it all the more shocking.
And you talk about inflection points, right? Jerry Jones has been at the center of attention when it comes to contracts for years now, a lot of years now, but even Dak and CD going to the end of the line, ultimately getting those done. But now with this one, I mean, it feels like we ask this question every time the Cowboys are in the media, but I mean, with Jerry Jones, like, is it time for him to not be the ultimate arbitrator and decision maker for this team anymore? They're not winning anything, and they're also not keeping their stars, as we've seen here recently.
Yeah, look, it's a fair question. I don't know enough about the inner workings of the Dallas Cowboys to give a definitive answer on that. But, man, when you trade away a guy like Micah Parsons at 26 years old, people are going to call into question how you're running the football team. That's just going to be a part of it. And if they don't hit on these draft picks and they can't capitalize on this window, this closing window with Dak Prescott, and at this point for the Cowboys, I don't even know that capitalizing is winning a Super Bowl. They've won one playoff game in the last 4 years, 5 years. Like, they just need to be better. They need to be a serious postseason team. If they can't do that in the aftermath of this trade, yeah, those calls are only going to get louder and louder for Jerry Jones to take on less of a role. It's tricky, right? Because he's the GM and the owner. So he's not going to fire himself. Where do you go from there? It's just going to kind of have to be this moment of self-awareness. Do we get that from Jerry Jones? But so ultimately the answer is no. I think Jerry Jones is going to run the Cowboys as long as Jerry Jones wants to run the Cowboys. And that's just the reality of it. But the calls are going to get louder and louder and louder for him to take on a lesser role after a move like this.
Yeah, it's going to take a long time for Cowboys fans to get over this, and really probably never unless something drastically changes within the Cowboys organization. And the last time they made the playoffs, they got knocked out by who? The Green Bay Packers. So
that's right.
Shocking that is the team that the Cowboys decided to give their best player to. But let's get to the Patriots, because there's a lot going on with their wide receiver room right now. They had 8 wide receivers on their initial 53-man roster, which, as we know, quickly changed. Had a few new graphics just here in the few hours that we were on the show with the older Foxborough Rush, changing that around. But one of which, Kendrick Bourne, who is now visiting with the 49ers and the Commanders next week. Alex, what are your thoughts on the Kendrick Bourne release?
I think it was time. I'm somebody who's been very high on Kendrick Bourne and had that great 2021 season, comes back in 22, doesn't mess with the coaching staff, gets put in the doghouse. That was became a lost season essentially. And he talked yesterday a little bit about what might have happened that year. Comes back or put some things in a statement that might have reflected on that. Comes back in 2023. He was having a great start. He was on a 900-yard pace to start that season, tears his ACL. And then this past season was still working through that, came back late. We know it can be 2 years back off the ACL for a guy to really be full strength. So, 4 years and an ACL tear later, it's probably too late to chase what he had in 2021. He's 30 years old now. I think it was time. They've gotten younger at the wide receiver position. It's obviously a new staff, although he did work with Josh McDaniels. It's a shame he never got to fully recognize his potential in New England, because I think there was probably more there than what they ultimately got out of him. And some of that's on the team, some of that's on him. But it did just kind of feel like the natural end of the road for both sides.
And Alex, another guy that you can say didn't reach his potential, not really close to it, is Javon Baker, who we talked about this. Yeah. I was on Foxborough Rush a few weeks ago talking about Baker as a potential practice squad guy for New England. Just signed today with the practice squad of the Eagles. What are your thoughts on that release? A guy that was pretty highly touted coming out of the draft last season.
Look, he had a good summer, but he had clearly hit a wall, right? Of where he had worked his way up from the third team to the second team. He was still struggling as a wide receiver. Like, he was making his push on special teams. They have other players that can play in the kicking game. So the reporting was they would have liked to have him back on the practice squad. He chose to go elsewhere. A change of scenery is probably not a bad idea ultimately for him, but if he wasn't going to be one of their top gunners, which again, he looked good on special teams, but it was unclear whether or not he was going to claim that role. He wasn't in the mix at wide receiver. So are you going to keep a backup gunner on your 53-man roster? Like you said off the top, didn't hit his potential clearly. He was supposed to be a factor as a wide receiver. He was supposed to be a factor as a downfield threat. Never truly accomplished that. We've seen that this current staff has no problem moving on from guys who they inherited, even if they were recent draft picks or given recent contracts or anything like that. And I just don't think he was competing enough as a wide receiver to ultimately land on the roster.
Yeah, you talk about setting the tone, right? Vrabel coming in, new regime in for this Patriots organization, and no one's safe, right? I think the moves that we've just seen throughout the whole offseason, even up till this hour, right, on today, it's pretty wild, and it just shows you the fresh start that they're really looking to have. But a lot has been made about this wide receiver room and the depth, but it's also the most competitive room on the team. And so what are your expectations for the Patriots wide receiver room this season?
So I think it's going to be better because I think their floor is higher. It really all lies on the potential of Stephon Diggs. And if Diggs can be the guy he was even last year in Houston, which wasn't the guy he was in Buffalo, but he was still on a tremendous pace, it would be their best wide receiver season they've probably had since Julian Edelman, maybe the very end of the Jacoby Myers tenure, certainly in a few years. Kayshon Boutte, if he can continue to be consistent the way he's been, because that's what I think held him back his first few NFL seasons was a lack of consistency, and he's improved tremendously in that regard so far this summer. So, those two, Demario Douglas, who I just think as long as he stays healthy is a legitimate big play threat with his speed and his quickness after the catch. That's a legitimate wide receiver room. It's not the top of the league or anything, but it's significantly better than what they've had. Then you throw Mac Hollins in there, Kyle Williams, we'll see where his development comes from. Efton Chisholm I look at as maybe a little bit more of a long-term developmental player, but in the mix as well. So I think they've raised the floor of that room, and some of that is guys in the room, again, like Kayshon Boutte, simply looking much better than they've been this summer, and obviously that has to translate. The ceiling is going to be determined by Stephon Diggs. Do they get a 1,000-yard guy this year, which they haven't had since Edelman? That I don't know. It's right on the line. They should have a receiver with more than, I think, 600 yards. I think Pop led them last year with 6-something. So I'm expecting more. It's still a work in progress. They still don't have that true number one guy. They still don't have that true coverage dictator, but they should be able to take a step forward for Drake May. I don't think it's a group that's, last year we talked about, and there were other positions we talked about this too, but the wide receivers maybe holding Drake May back at times. I don't think it's a group that should hold Drake May back. I don't think it's a group that's going to help him a ton, but I don't think it's a group that's going to hold him back either.
And Alex, given that, do you think it makes sense for the Patriots to kick the tires on Jacoby Myers, right? I mean, he's obviously expressed that he wants to get paid more. He's asked for a trade from Vegas, a guy that's thrived under McDaniels. He's been a Patriot before. He's a big body, could help out Drake May. Do you think it makes sense for them to at least inquire about his services? And if so, one thing that I was just thinking of, do you think that maybe would halt maybe the growth potential of Kyle Williams if they do end up getting Myers on the team?
So that's a good question. Like, blanket statement, I guess, yes, this team should be going after talent where they can get it because they just need more talent on the roster, and Jacoby Myers is a talented player. But what he does is very similar to what Stephon Diggs looks like he's going to do in this offense. So are you taking snaps away from Diggs? How's that going to go, especially after he just signed here in free agency? Are you going to put them both on the field at the same time and play one of them out of position? Now you're maybe limiting what that guy can do. You are kind of, if you're going to sign Jacoby Myers to a multi-year contract, Kyle Williams also looks like he could end up being in that role at least partially, and now you're maybe limiting what he's going to do. So there's an argument to be made that just get him in the building because he's good and worry about all of that later. For me, if it's between him and Diggs, I do think there's more certainty there with Jacoby Myers. He's younger. He's not coming off an injury. You just have a better idea of what you're going to get out of him. Diggs, there's more variance, but I think if Diggs is on, if Diggs is right, he can give you more than what Jacoby Myers is going to give you. So for me, go with the upside. Go with the lottery ticket, whatever you want to call it. They have a lot of floor wide receivers. And I know it sounds weird to talk about a 31-year-old guy coming off a torn ACL as a ceiling guy, but we've all seen what Stephon Diggs can be when he's healthy. And I just don't think you miss on the opportunity. You pass on the opportunity to even potentially have that guy for your second year up and coming quarterback.
Yeah, well, Patriots are hoping that Diggs is that guy, and he is him, and has the swagger that Drake May has spoken frequently about. But there were two other moves Wednesday of this week, and let's start with Tommy DeVito. Welcome to the North End. Sorry, welcome to Foxborough, Tommy DeVito. Alex, what do you think about this move?
We knew they were going to add a third quarterback. The question was it going to be just somebody on the practice squad to run the scout team or a true QB3? And that's what they're doing if Tommy DeVito's on the active roster. You know, will he push Josh Dobbs for the backup quarterback job after Dobbs had a rough summer? We may not ever truly get the answer to that because these are closed practices unless, you know, one game day suddenly Josh Dobbs is the emergency QB3. That would be indicative that Tommy DeVito passed him. I did think they need to add a little more depth in that room. Look, it doesn't change the way you feel about what happens if this team is without Drake May for any period of time. It's a significant step back. DeVito is a backup quarterback in this league. I don't think he's a guy that's going to, you know, push Drake May or anything like that, or you're going to feel okay if Drake May's out. But after Josh Dobbs had a shaky summer, getting some insurance in for him does make sense. And again, they always needed a third quarterback. They always needed a scout team quarterback. If they felt like they had that extra roster spot, you might as well go a little higher on that guy you're adding as opposed to just getting, you know, a UDFA on the practice squad or somebody like that.
And Alex, were you shocked at all about this move? I mean, for me, it's a little bit interesting because a lot of people don't think of DeVito as a quarterback. They just think of him as the Italian guy who does the hand things. And I think that from a football standpoint, like you just mentioned, this is not a bad move at all. If it's someone that can develop into a QB2 or maybe just run the scout team like you mentioned. But were you surprised at all just to see this move after DeVito's pretty successful preseason in New York?
Not entirely. He played well against them. There's some overlap in the offense. Brian Daboll to Josh McDaniels. Ryan Cowden, who's now in the Patriots front office, high up in the Patriots front office. I apologize for forgetting his exact title, but he was there when he was in New York when the Giants added DeVito. So there's some connections there. Mike Reese had speculated about it leading up to it, so it didn't come as a major surprise. You always knew they were going to add a quarterback, and there's enough through lines there. There's enough ties that it made him a logical choice. And he even said yesterday that he wasn't particularly surprised by it, given some of the connections.
Alex, before break, we want to ask you about one more player that the Patriots picked up. Defensive back Charles Woods, core special teams player last season for the Rams. What should we know about this player?
So that's a big part of it, core special teams player. We talked about a little bit with Javon Baker. They have some other guys that can play in the kicking game, and he can play a lot of different places on defense. And he's probably not a guy you want to start, at least not at this point in his career, but they are kind of thin at cornerback, especially if Christian Gonzalez is going to be banged up. Moving on from Jabrill Peppers, they're a little bit thinner at safety now. So this is a guy that can play some free safety, can play in the slot, can play on the boundary, and kind of what you're looking for in roster cuts, just guys that add depth. And the best thing a depth player can do is play multiple positions. I think he does that. Ideally, you don't see him a ton on defense this year, and he is just a core special teamer. But the fact that he can give them some snaps at multiple positions if they need is encouraging.
Well, guys that add depth, that's what the Patriots are looking for, so that's good to hear. When we come back, Alex will get us ready for opening kickoff against the Raiders at Gillette Stadium, so stay tuned when we come back for a season update from Alex. Welcome back to Foxborough Rush. Annabelle Hasselbeck Khalin Kapoor and Alex Barth. Pete Carroll and co. are coming to New England, opening up the season at Gillette. Getting ready for the big game next Sunday. And we saw that Christian Gonzalez did not practice again yesterday, dealing with a left hamstring injury. And should we expect him to play week one? Because this is definitely raising some concerns, just even what we talked about earlier on the show with the Patriots defense.
Yeah, hamstrings are tricky. They're always tricky. And there was a report from Jeff Howe this morning that there was some uncertainty about his status. I look at Wednesday as the day you go from, call it lowercase w worried to capital W worried about Christian Gonzalez. It's a guy, hamstrings are tricky, and he's their best player. Like, you want to be cautious with him. You want to slow play it with him. It didn't bother me, even if he could have been out there, that he missed a ton of camp. Now it's sounding like maybe that was more based on the injury than simply just caution from the Patriots. But Wednesday's when you start the game prep, right? And they've been preparing for the Raiders, but that's when you really get into it, first practice of the week. So if he's not out there Wednesday, that's when I go from like, I wonder if he'll play to, okay, now I think he might not play. But it's, again, lowercase w worried right now. He could be out there Wednesday, and all right, they just want to give him the extra week to get set and Once it really gets down to it, he'll be out there. That's when it's like, okay, now he's missing real time that like he needs to be out there and get ready for this opponent, as opposed to training camp where it's more just basic preparation. So that will be the big tell for me.
And Alex, what's your read on just the way to play an injury like this, where if you go to get him out there full speed, there's that risk of re-aggravation, a soft tissue injury? The word tricky was used a lot in the reporting about this injury, and that's not a great word to hear when you're talking about a hamstring injury.
No.
So what do you think about just the best way to play this when you're considering the long-term effects potentially of getting him out there and having him re-aggravate an injury?
So I'm not a doctor, far from it. I don't know the finer points of hamstring recovery. I would just say these are, like you pointed out, this is a thing that can be re-aggravated. Having him play 2 weeks to then miss 6 would be worse than having him miss 2 or 3 weeks to start the season and then be good. So I think you want to be cautious, but at the same time, this is a team that needs to get off to a good start. Their schedule is weaker at the beginning than it is at the end. They need to bank wins early on while they can. Now, I don't know that they necessarily need him to beat the Raiders. It definitely doesn't help because it's a close game, but the Raiders don't have a ton of wide receiver talent unless they planned on putting him on Brock Bowers, in which case it would be a major loss. But I don't think that would be the matchup. But that's what they're going to have to weigh. Like, that's the question, is you rush him back because you want to get off to a strong start. It's a new coaching staff, and they may feel some pressure to do that. Okay, like, I get that. But if he re-aggravates it, now he misses more time than he otherwise would have. That's the worst case scenario. So, and I don't think he's necessarily the kind of guy that you look at and say, okay, well, we're only going to put him out on the field 50% of the time. Like, he's a cornerstone player. He's a guy you're going to build some of your defensive schemes around. He's maybe more, I guess it's better to have him out there than not, but I think he's a guy you want either full go or, we have to do some things differently because we don't have you at your best.
Yeah, you talk about injuries that linger, and hamstring is the number one injury, right? This was initially started that first training camp practice, right? I think it was like one of the first plays at training camp, and
now
it
was like the first week or something.
Right, and then you see where this has taken him, and that's why it matters of how you take care of it. And former Patriot David Andrews actually tweeted out this morning, just stressing his own concern for wanting him to be a consistent part of this team and not going out there for 2 weeks. Then he says, and then down another 6 because it's a little concerning. So you can see how the former Patriots are even aware of how detrimental this could be if it does linger. But how much trouble do you think the Patriots would be in if Gonzo is out long term?
Long-term significant. Again, I just think the Raiders is a unique matchup where I don't want to say that they're okay without Christian Gonzalez because they're not. He's their best player, but that's a team that's going to come in, try to run the football, throw to the tight end. They will be able to take some more advantage if Gonzalez isn't out there, but that's not as impactful as a game against, say, Miami with their wide receivers, or Pittsburgh where you get to George Pickens and DK Metcalf and some of these other really good receivers they'll face down the road. And Carlton Davis will have to have a bigger workload, but he's been limited at times this summer too. So no, losing Christian Gonzalez for any period of time would be a significant blow to this defense. He's going to allow them to play differently. When you have a guy like that who's an elite man cover corner, you can essentially take away whatever you want from the offense, whether it be a certain receiver or a certain side of the ball, like left or right or what have you. All right, this guy's going to take this away, and we're going to play 10-on-10 over here. And that makes things just so much easier for the life of a defensive coordinator and a defense as a whole. And look, Carlton Davis is a good corner. It's not like Carlton Davis can't play, but Gonzalez is on another level. He's a top 3 corner in the game. The expectation this year was for him to at least put himself in the conversation for the best player at the position. Anytime you lose a guy like that, it's going to hurt you because it's going to change the way you play fundamentally. This isn't a guy that's just good in his role. This is a guy whose role at times dictates the rest of the defense.
And Alex, real quick, we talked about the offense here on the wide receiver side, but real quick for week 1, the TreVeyon Henderson hype train has left the station. It's gone far and far away, but real quick, for his utilization week 1, how do you think Josh McDaniels is going to use TreVeyon Henderson against the Raiders, and what do you see in terms of the split between him and Ramondre Stevenson?
So I wouldn't be surprised if Ramondre ends up playing more snaps because that's just how McDaniels has done it in the past with the early down passing down back. And, he's going to get the 1st and 10s, the 2nd and 5s, and the downhill stuff. But when you talk about starting running back for the Patriots, I think it's kind of irrelevant because Like, I can be out there for the first play of the game, start, and only end up playing 5 or 6 snaps. We've seen that happen before. It's really all about what situations you're in. And I think when you get into those crucial gotta-have-it spots, third downs, 2-minute, red zone, not goal line, but red zone, from call it high red zone, like 8 to 20-yard line, things in there. I think that's where you're going to see Travion Henderson the most. And so his overall usage may be dictated on how many of those spots they are in. But I think in the money downs, the gotta-have-it situations, I think he's going to be the guy that they go to more often than not.
Alex, another guy that has been really impressive throughout this training camp and preseason, Will Campbell, has a tough task in going up against Will Crosby for his very first real NFL game. How do you think he will do?
So it's going to be interesting because Crosby usually rushes off right tackle. So that may not be the matchup. Now, if I'm the Raiders, you'd think, all right, this kid's a rookie. Let's put our all-pro over him and see how he handles it. So this is going to be one of the interesting things to watch early in the game. Do they do that full time? Do they maybe pick spots? Again, those crucial situations, third down, red zone, 2-minute, we're going to put Crosby over Campbell. Or do they keep, do they just do what they do? And some of these rushers, he's not alone. I think TJ Watt's the same way, prefers to rush off that right tackle side. Do they just let him do what he wants best? Now, Malcolm Kuntz on the other side is not a bad player. He's not Max Crosby, but he's not a bad player. So Will Campbell will still have his hands full. But this is going to be one of the early interesting chess piece things to pick up. Do they put Crosby over Campbell? In what spots do they do it? And how do the Patriots ultimately adjust?
Yeah, well, Max Crosby will be a tough task for the entire offensive line for the Patriots. But hey,
Yes.
what can you ask for, right? This has been the topic of discussion for the Patriots and this offensive line, since last season. And so what a great test for them to go up and really to prove themselves. But Alex, thank you so much for taking your time with us to talk Patriots and all things and getting Patriots Nation excited for this season. We hope you have an amazing Labor Day weekend. Enjoy yourself, have some fun, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me, guys.
What's up? This is Foxborough Rush, where we talk X's and O's of Patriots football, but also some fashion, okay? And I think it's time to get into it because there's a new uniform drop. The NFL released 8 new uniforms. The Bills, Cardinals, Dolphins, 49ers, Pats, Jets, Rams, and Seahawks all got rivalry uniforms. The hope is to unite fans, create hometown pride. Yesterday, the Patriots unveiled their rivalry uniforms, the Nor'easter uniforms, for Week 11 rivalry game against the Jets. Colin, what are your initial thoughts of the Nor'easter uniforms?
All right, Annabelle, I got to plant my flag here because I have seen just so much negativity about these. I think these are awesome. I think they're sick. I really, really like the color scheme. I love the helmets. I think the helmets are probably the best part for me. The only thing I don't like, and unfortunately the Pats made it their profile picture, not a fan of the NE letter mark there that's on the shoulders, but overall, I'm seeing people on social media drag these things, and I just don't get it. I don't understand why there's so much negativity around these uniforms. I understand that people would have liked to see retro, the light blue or the light red, but you got to remember, that's not what this collection is supposed to be. It's supposed to be modern, rivalry, futuristic concepts. Look at what the Dolphins and the Jets did just in the Patriots division. I think these are really cool, and I think the key thing is, I think these are going to look really, really great on the field. There's a couple of these jerseys, specifically the Cardinals, that look okay because of the lighting in these promo shoots. I think the Cardinals jersey is going to look atrocious on an NFL field. I think this Patriots one is going to look really, really great on the field. I'm excited to see it live in Week 11. And I just don't understand. I mean, I was watching stuff this morning and reading tweets this morning that was like, these are the worst jerseys of all time. The Patriots should be ashamed. All this stuff. I'm like, hey, these are cool. The helmets are great. The color is great. I love the stripes. I am all in on these jerseys. I'm a big fan.
Hey, that's a great analysis, especially pointing out the lighting differences. Like, okay, we'll see how your communication team does, but when it's on the field, that's what really matters. That's what people are seeing and what it looks like in the pro shop as well. I know there's some other gear that people can get, but I love this because I think the muted blue, I think some people might look at the Seahawks, shiny and bright neon uniforms and the Dolphins too, and have that, like you said, that futuristic look. But I think there is something special and kind of classy and iconic about that that muted blue color of the jerseys. I'm right there with you. I love the white helmets. I love the logo on it. But yeah, the NE, I feel like I can't get behind that much. What I can get behind is the name, the Nor'easter. That is something that really unites anyone from New England, whether you have, a kind of a negative connotation of how the heck am I going to shovel my car out of this pavement and the snow and all these things, or hey, school's canceled, whatever it brings you back to. I think that's the point of these jerseys as well, is to really unite people around something fun like this themed game.
And I think that the branding, they nailed it. I really do. I think that they nailed that aspect of it. And as someone who has been a part of some of those jersey things before in previous jobs, I think they did a really great job with this. And I will say, I love what the Bills did too. They kind of went in a similar direction with the snow game and the ice crystallizations on the shoulder patch and the helmet. But I think the Patriots are right up there. If you're talking about the rankings of the best jerseys in these new collections, I think the Patriots are probably top 3. Maybe the Bills are above them. And I do like what the Jets were doing conceptually. I don't think they executed it as well. They go Gotham City football, and they really just do dark green and not much else. But I think that overall, the Patriots did a really great job with this one. And I'm excited to see, you mentioned it in the Pro Shop, the other kind of gear that's a part of this, the shirts and the hats and the beanies and all this stuff. I think that it's a really great opportunity. And I mentioned this before, I'll say it one more time. A retro jersey would have been really great with red or light blue. But again, that's not what this collection is supposed to be. It's supposed to be something new, something different. And I think you mentioned it with the color scheme. I think they nailed that color scheme with the frosty blue and things like that. You're seeing what we should have had. And yeah, like a retro jersey would have been cool. I personally think, you guys can hate on me, I think what they executed for this collection, being the Nor'easter jersey, is better than just going back to a retro jersey for a collection like this one, because to me that feels a little bit like a cop-out instead of trying to create something new and have a new outward-facing brand identity for this collection.
Yeah, and it's a different theme, right? The Patriots will have their throwback in Week 3 against the Steelers, and then again later in December. So there is time to see those iconic royal blue jerseys. They will be there. But let's take it to Chapel Hill, because Jordan Hudson and her boyfriend, Bill Belichick, have trademarked the phrase gold digger accessories, okay, with the intention to use the phrase to create a line of jewelry and keychains. This isn't the first file for the trademark, but this wasn't the first trademark they filed for, including Chapel Bill, the Belichick way, amongst other phrases, but clearly an attempt to just kind of poke fun at the criticism that their relationship has taken. And hey, looks like you can try to make a buck on anything, I guess. So, Colin, what do you think about this trademark?
Yeah, you mentioned it, AB. They're not just trying to poke fun at it, they're trying to monetize it. And if you're a marketing mind, I think Jordan Hudson has a marketing mind. She's like, I'm going to make some money on these people that are clowning us. That's not going to stop me from clowning this, because it's just ridiculous. Like, it is ridiculous that this is happening right now. I think it's hilarious. I think that it's generating buzz, it's generating conversation. That's exactly what Jordan Hudson wants out of doing this, and probably making sure there was a lot of press coverage about it. But, oh my God, I mean, talk about the legacy of Bill Belichick as this like hardline, iron-fisted coach that, wears short sleeve hoodies in a driving snowstorm, and now it's the Trail of Salty Tears and the Bellustrator and Chapel Bill and Gold Digger. That's what you're going to think of when you think of Bill Belichick. I just think that's crazy. Hopefully when the UNC football starts, and ideally, the team starts winning, he can reclaim a little bit of that football genius as opposed to the sideshow that is Bill Belichick in my mind right now. But overall, I mean, this is just crazy. Like, I saw this on Twitter a few days ago whenever it dropped. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was like, NBA Centel, like some kind of like, parody account coming out here and talking about this, but it is real life, and this is somehow the world that we live in with Bill Belichick. Is just crazy.
Yeah, it is pretty wild, and you got to wonder like how far the creativity will go with this. You got to credit Jordan Hudson for capitalizing on the opportunity. Maybe they'll see the keychains or accessories, gold digger accessories, in the UNC bookstore. Maybe I've been to that UNC bookstore. It's like multiple stories. Okay, that thing is like heaven for anyone who loves Carolina blue. Definitely recommend if you have to go visit. But yeah, I think that what you bring up is interesting. Just knowing Belichick's reputation and just the hope that he has for his UNC team, you have to wonder, in what ways did that impact this? So I'm curious, what do you think and how do you think his inaugural season at North Carolina is going to go?
I think that it's going to be tough to separate the football from, like I said, the sideshow, right? And I think that he's going to do his best to make sure the football, the success, if there is any, is going to be top of mind. But I think it's going to be really tough in the age of social media to differentiate those two things. And you hope that if they stack some big wins, if they have really great success throughout the regular season into bowl games, whatever it may be, we're going to be talking about that more. But I think you hit the nail on the head. How far is this going to go with the marketing and the ploys and all of these items? How far is that going to go? Is that just going to take over? I can't imagine going into any store and buying a keychain that says Gold Digger. Maybe I'm in the minority there, maybe. But again, if people are going to be buying this, they're going to keep doing it. And unfortunately, as a sports football fan myself, and not necessarily a fan of all the extracurriculars going on with the Bill Belichick stuff, it's probably going to be more of the latter as opposed to the former if people keep talking about it, if it keeps making them money. And overall, I'd say that if the team is successful, if the football ends up paying off, and that's still a big if in my mind, maybe that becomes the primary talking point instead of absolutely being the primary talking point if all of this stuff on the outskirts wasn't actually happening.
Well, Colin, I haven't known you that long, but I would not expect you to buy a keychain with Gold Digger on it. So don't worry, you are free of all of those expectations. But let's get to the love story that everyone wants to talk about because Travis knelt to the ground and pulled out a ring and said, I don't exactly know what he said, but Taylor said yes. The couple announced the news on Instagram with the caption, "Your English teacher and gym teacher are getting married," bomb emoji. Colin, where were you when the news broke?
I got a notification on my phone when I saw this, and you know what I did? I immediately texted my mom. I was like, "Did you hear the big news?" And she immediately was like, "Did he propose?" That's what happened, and it's such like an iconic thing at this point that if I texted one of my friends who's like a huge Swiftie, I was like, "What are your thoughts on the news?" She was like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!" Right? Like the news is this. Like this is so ubiquitous. I think it's really great. I'm seeing people, obviously the social media cesspool of negativity that is Twitter has all of their opinions on it. And there's specific sects of Swifties that don't like it and specific ones that do like it. I think it's great. They've been together for 2 years. They obviously seem to be in love with each other. So it's very cool. Hopefully, Travis Kelce can have an amazing season because of it too. And yeah, I am not the kind of person that if I see Taylor Swift on my screen watching Sunday Night Football is going to turn off the TV and start furiously tweeting about how horrible the NFL is. So I think it's pretty cool. I think that the new album, the whole announcement on New Heights, I watched the podcast. I thought it was really interesting seeing the behind the scenes of the music industry. I heard about Taylor getting her music back. I didn't know what that meant, and now I do know what that means. And I think that is a really interesting thing. And it was pretty cool to see all of those behind the scenes stuff. And apparently the proposal happened right after that podcast, which is also pretty cool too. So I'm all for it. I love it.
You did your homework.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, listen,
I was ready. Like 8:05 p.m. New Heights podcast. I was there.
That's good. I wasn't on the live, but I did watch it back later. And it was really interesting just to learn all the things with her music and their relationship, right? Because you see it from afar, but it was definitely cool to hear them both speak about it. But I thought what was so crazy is just, the adrenaline spike with the Taylor and Travis news comes out early on Tuesday. Then we have the Micah Parsons news, and I kind of felt like, I'm like, okay, already for news around the NFL, I feel like I had already hit that peak of adrenaline for the week. So when the Micah Parsons
Justin
stuff
Herbert
happened,
and
it was
Madison
kind of like,
too. I mean, it just doesn't stop.
Right. No, it doesn't stop. But I think what people admired about the whole proposal and how they released it was just casually on Instagram. Like you're just scrolling or someone texts you, did you see the post? Kind of like you would see anyone else's proposal post. So I think that was what was so attractive about the whole situation. But since their engagement on Tuesday, Travis's jersey sales has spiked 200%. And obviously Taylor's music surging on Spotify. But it just kind of shows you how her music has now taken on a whole new meaning because you can really see the end story to all the love story songs that she was singing.
Absolutely. And watching that podcast, she said that If this is serious, talking about Travis, going to a concert with a friendship bracelet, she was like, if this is serious, this is the stuff I've been singing about since I was in high school. Yes, I did do my homework. I watched that entire podcast. But yeah, it's really cool, and I think that it's good for the game for the NFL to get all these fans learning about football. If you watch the New Heights podcast, if you listen, they had a section that was dedicated to like football questions by Swifties, and they would actually take the time and answer those questions. Some of them pretty basic stuff, but also some of them talking about like, different types of coverages and formations, cover 2 versus cover 0, things like that. And I thought that was pretty cool. You're getting more people engaged in the sport, and you're also generating new and different ways for attention in the NFL. I think that's really interesting. And I also think that there's obviously going to be those fans that are like, I hate seeing Taylor Swift. I hate seeing all this stuff on my screen. But there's also the reasonable people that are like, oh, there's interesting music here, and I'm actually going to take the time and listen to some of it. And I think that's pretty cool, too. It's the merging of both worlds. Taylor Swift said that she took the time to learn about football. Travis Kelce said he took the time to listen to all the albums. Like, all of this stuff is really cool. And I think you kind of see an extension of that in the general fan bases on both sides of football fans listening to more music and Swifties watching more football. And I think that's pretty cool overall.
I got one question for you that a lot of people are asking and talking about. They think Taylor will be this year's Super Bowl halftime performer. I have serious doubts because of the amount of time that you're really not even around for the game that's going on. So I don't think that she will be the Super Bowl halftime performer, even though that would be really cool. What are your thoughts on this?
I don't think she'll do it unless the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl. And I think if the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl, she's going to be like up in the stands and then somehow like paraglide her way down to the stage and be like a guest
that would
performance.
Be cool. That would be worth it.
Headliner. And I think it's like Tom Cruise jumping off a building or whatever. And like she's like in the parachute. She jumps down on the stage, sings one of the new songs or whatever it is. That'd be pretty sick. I think it hinges on the Chiefs making the Super Bowl because I think it would be kind of poetically weird if Taylor Swift is in the Super Bowl and Travis Kelce isn't in the Super Bowl. And I think that wouldn't really make a lot of sense to me. I thought maybe she would like do the whole jumping onto the stage last season. Of course, that would have been odd given that the Chiefs ended up losing. But no, I don't think she's going to be the headliner. Maybe if the Chiefs make it, she'll make a surprise appearance.
Well, that is the best take and best idea that I've actually heard anywhere on the internet, social media, in person. So absolutely love that. We'll have to get to that, to the people who do the deciding who the guest singer is going to be. But when we come back, we're going to get to the mailbag, all the questions that you guys have. Patriots fans, what you're wondering about the upcoming season. So stay with us. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Foxborough Rush. Let's get to the mailbag. I always love this segment. Super fun hearing from all of you guys. And let's start with a tweet to Nesson about making a show where Roman Anthony and Tommy DeVito would go around and rate Italian restaurants at Nesson. Can you make this happen? I think let's do it. That's awesome. We have a show at Nesson called Meet Boston with Billy and Jenny. So it's kind of similar. Maybe they could be a guest appearance or their own show. Meet the North End with Anthony and Tommy. What do you think?
I think you got to get Sean Stellato there too, Tommy's agent. But I think Madeline should be in the creative department over here, making some of these calls because that's a great idea. I love it. I think that the two personalities would be great together, and also highlighting some under the radar spots in the North End would be pretty cool. So yeah, I'm all for it, all in.
I absolutely love it. Do you have a favorite spot in the North End?
I don't right now because I don't live in Boston currently, but I will be back this coming week. So I'm excited to be back. I mean, I guess like Modern Pastry is the obvious one, but I have been there before. It's really cool. I love cannoli. So
that's the iconic one. You're right. Okay, well, let's get to Skylar, 85 on Jacoby Myers. It makes no sense for the Patriots to trade Myers. He is the same type of player as Pop Douglas. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a hard disagree for me. I don't think they're really similar archetypes. I mean, Myers is 6 inches taller. He's 6'2". Pop Douglas is 5'8". Pop Douglas was in the slot 70% of the time last year. Myers only 30%. I think Jacoby Myers is a big-bodied, reliable, proven receiver that could be a big help to Drake May. And I think Pop Douglas is great. I just don't think they're similar enough to warrant this deal or a potential signing not being made.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And it's also like develop the guys you have, right? Like you have an Efton Chisholm, you have a Kyle Williams. Hopefully you can help Pop Douglas become the guy someday when Diggs isn't there, right? And so, yeah, I think you're looking at a guy like Jacoby Myers. He's a great player, very talented. It's not like you're getting Randy Moss, okay? So I think use the opportunity to do what Vrabel's really good at and develop players. But let's get to one more mailbag here. Roy Keish on rookie Andy Bargalis winning the kicking job. John Parker Romo cut wasn't a competition. It really felt like a competition based off of how Vrabel was talking, but what are your thoughts on the kicker position?
I just don't want to have to worry about the kicker position anymore. I think that's kind of the common theme when it comes to special teams is you just hope you can make kicks pretty reliably inside 50 yards and hopefully outside 50 yards the way the NFL is going. But yeah, congrats to the rookie, and hopefully he can stick it out with the job.
Yeah, and you draft a kicker. They said it was a competition throughout the entire training camp. It's hard to believe that they really didn't have their mindset on what it was going to be unless Andy, had an absolute terrible showing, but that's not what happened. He came out, competed, and I think it just goes back to what we've seen with the other Patriots players and some of these veterans and former captains leaving. Like, Vrabel wants a clean start. He wants a fresh slate to work with, and he really wants his guys, right? Because Romo, obviously a great kicker, but it's clear that Vrabel wants his guys. He has a plan for this organization, and we'll see how it's going to go. He said, just the entire body of work when he was talking about Borregales is why they felt like Andy could be the kicker. And really, when you think about that body of work, it's the whole body work of them bringing him to the New England Patriots. But Khalin, super fun to do Foxborough Rush with you today. It was a great show. I hope you have some fun Labor Day plans. We got to talk Patriots football, got to talk Micah Parsons, Taylor Swift, and Travis Kelce. Who wouldn't want to do that? Loved your idea. But thanks so much for tuning in to Foxborough Rush. We will see you next week getting ready for the Patriots home opener against the Raiders. I'm Annabelle Hasselbeck Khalin Kapoor. We will see you next week.